millions of dollars from a communist nation during the pandemic. What happened?
Senate passed a $250 billion bipartisan bill to counter Chinese Communist government. However, there's no bipartisan agreement on holding the CCP accountable for the pandemic. Why the difference?
Welcome to the live session of the Wei and
Kathy
show. All right, it's great to see you again, and thank you for being here. And so we want to bring you three topics today. The first has to do with the Senate's bill that was passed yesterday, 68 to 32. So basically, largely, it's a bipartisan bill. And then it approved a sweeping package of legislation intended to boost the United States' ability to compete with the Chinese technology. Let me just give you a little background. Okay, so largely our country is a free economy, right? So government do not quite interfere with the private business, which includes technology. However, in this, cross the Pacific competition, technology competition, the company like Huawei or the Zhongxin, what is Zhongxin's English name?
Slipped my
Okay,
mind.
so another major mobile phone company, cell phone company, Huawei, Zhongxin, and other, basically other Chinese high-tech company, they have been heavily subsidized, even by the military, to compete with the U.S. company.
Right, got it, CTE.
CTE, yes. Thank you. CTE and Huawei. So that created uneven uneven ground, right? For the competition, how can they, how big our American company is, or how powerful it is? How does that company compete with a nation? It's rather hard. So basically, to resolve this problem, the Senate, basically on Tuesday, said we're gonna jump in and subsidize our company too. So this is essentially what happened. So the bill would allocate $250 billion, okay, and to boost the U.S. technology, including about $190 billion to strengthen our technology and research. Another 50 or so to increase the U.S. production. Into the semiconductor and the telecommunication. So I want to remind you guys. So U.S. has been strong with R&D in terms of a semiconductor. U.S. do not have that many fab. A fab is a semiconductor company, semiconductor factories, right? They are used to be in Silicon Valley. That's why we call Silicon Valley, Silicon Valley. Those fab have largely moved to South Korea and Taiwan and other nations. All right, now heavily they are in Taiwan. So Taiwan does the production, while U.S. does the R&D. R&D, of course, has the higher profit. So it's not a bad deal in terms of supply chain, as far as supply chain is concerned. However, going through this, the challenging from the CCP, going through the pandemic, U.S. now realize, Republican or Democrat, we realize we have to have our crucial supply chain rooted in this country, in our own country. So this bill is, $50 billion would be used to address that issue. We're going to build our own fabrication, fab factories in this country to produce chips for our own. So this is also what that would resolve. Of course, and then $2 billion would be dedicated to the specific chips used by our car makers. Okay, Ford and GE and so on. They don't have enough chips, so they have to close factories now. So that was addressed to that. So largely, Uncle Sam jumped into the private business circle and is saying that we're going to subsidize too so that you can play even with the CCP's companies. Do you agree to this or not? Okay, I want to get your opinion. If you do, please type up your response. Next, let me share with you the feedback from the CCP and from the 32, senators who vote no.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because the first from CCP, of course, they are very, very mad. Okay, the CCP said, U.S. is treating China as an imaginary enemy, and they don't agree, to that. Anyway, this is just, this is for granted. They're gonna say things like that, and they said we express strong indignation and resolute opposition to the bill and so on and so forth. I don't want to waste too much time there. Okay, so anyway, that's just given. They are very, they know this hit on the right spot. And in the meantime, why those 32 senators refuse to endorse the bill? But largely it's still a bipartisan bill. 68 senators vote yes. So this is the rare bipartisan bill, given how widely different the two parties are in our Senate. So this is one of the rare areas the two parties join hand together. So the reason why a good number, about 32 Republican senators, refused to vote yes on that is two reasons. First, some of them think it's not strong enough. It's still not strong enough. Okay, well, you understand that. The second type of response is that U.S. should not, the federal government should not jump into this private business circle arena and subsidize our company to compete with the CCP. And I don't know, again, that's another controversial point. Mm-hmm. Normally, U.S. government never did that. But now, given the situation, they jump in and subsidize and try to even the ground. So do you agree? And so Senator Johnson said, by doing that, we are increasing our national debt, which will weaken our economy eventually, and not necessarily we're going to win the technology competition. That's his point of view. By traditional sense, I would say I agree. Government should not get involved casually, because government, federal dollars is very easy wasted if you are allocated without a strict condition. On the other hand, indeed, we face this special situation.
Right.
Where Huawei is subsidized by an entire nation to compete with our telecom company and our mobile company. So what's your opinion? I'd love to find out about that. That's the first piece of news. And then as we move on, let's remember this first resolution. Now it will move to the House, and the House will mark it up. How it will turn out to be, we don't know. But I expect that will pass. Okay, this is one of the rare areas the two parties really get united.
Probably for different reasons.
For different reasons, yes. Now the second one is very interesting. Okay, the second one is about finding CCP accountable for the pandemic, the spreading of the pandemic, for the virus, right? You would say, of course, that's a bipartisan thing. No, that's not a bipartisan thing. Believe it or not, it's not a bipartisan thing.
Yeah, why is that?
Yeah, first, let me just share with you. Kevin McCarthy, the Republican minority leader of the Congress, the Republican congressman, and then he raised that we are going to propose a resolution to really hold the CCP accountable for that, and then they would allow pass a new law, allow private citizens and all the U.S. businesses who were hurt by this virus to sue the CCP, sue China, basically, in the U.S. court, and to seek compensation for that. And would that work? Actually, how that would work is the Congress could amend a law called the Foreign Sovereign Immunity Act, okay, or pass a separate bill to allow Americans who lost loved ones to sue China over wrongful death, or Americans whose businesses suffered in the pandemic. Actually, as a matter of fact, a similar thing happened for the 9/11 victims, right? So after 9/11, the attack, the Congress actually passed a law to allow the people to sue the Saudi Arabia government, and that bill was passed. 9/11 happened in 2001, right? And this bill passed in 2016. After 15 years, it passed this law. All right. So then, of course, those victim family, they sued Saudi Arabia. The lawsuit is still going on in the court of the U.S. against Saudi Arabian government. So there's no result yet. But at that time, President Obama vetoed the bill. The bipartisan support was so strong. They vetoed the president's veto. So they still passed that law. So that law is called Justice Against the Sponsors of Terrorism Act, JASTA. So JASTA got passed. So why not this time? And Kevin McCarthy said that, we know that why did China stop domestic flights but keep international flights at the early stage of the spreading of the virus? Why did they influence the WHO to lie to the world? Why did they, hoard the PPE, the gears, right? At a time when they knew what was coming. So CCP has no way to, to evade its responsibility or the accountability. So we all expect that to be a strong bipartisan bill. Okay? But the answer is no, it won't happen. And then
why is that?
Why is that? Can you guess? I'm just, because I was searching, right? So I was trying to find out whether that would happen. So I searched in the CS Monitor, Christian Science Monitor. Yeah, and they have a report. Okay, this is what they said. I don't even want to say it because it's quite demoralizing. But this is what they reported. Okay, assuming it's true, they said the Democrats afraid that if they jump on the board with the Republican, going after the accountability of the virus in the CCP, that would help President Trump avoid his own accountability to get the country mired in this trouble of the pandemic.
Basically, they wanted to keep the
blame.
Responsibility, the blame or the responsibility
on Trump
handling the pandemic.
Yeah. So they said this is the complete charge. They said they don't. If they allow the Congress to do this, Congress hold its own hearing, issue its own subpoena, and then draw its own conclusion. They're afraid of Republican senators and congressmen would politicize that. Okay, making that a political agenda, give it a political narrative. So they said we don't do it. We let the intelligence community do it. And in that way, we can avoid this, the narratives of politicians. That's their reason. Do you agree? So ended up, our Congress will not pass bill at this point. They will not, join hand and pass a bill, just like the 9/11 for the victimized Americans, just like the 9/11 victims. It doesn't look like it will happen at this time. So that's their reason. Do you agree? Do you agree that? First, do you believe that's true? Okay, this is from the Christian Science Monitor. The second, if that's true, do you think that's good policy?
Yeah, well, it kind of reminds me of how the two parties in Taiwan handled the relationship with the CCP government. The National Party, in order to gain their own power, they actually choose to be friendly with the CCP government, even though actually for the interest of Taiwan's people and the nation, it would, the two parties, although they have differences, it actually would be better for the two parties united to go against the CCP. So that's just what reminded me of that. It ended up with the CCP was able to take advantage of such a divide between the DDP and the KMT, the two different parties in Taiwan during the KMT's administration, which actually weakened the Taiwan's nation, like both economically and in other aspects. So. Yeah, I don't know if it's a good idea in order to just, to hold on to one party's responsibility as they perceive or for a political reason, but to let go of, to play loose on the CCP. I don't know if that's a good idea.
Yeah. And another episode, I want you to know that there's this House Energy and Commerce Committee, very powerful committee in the House, right? And the lead Republican, her name is Kathy Rogers, and then she has been pressing for answers from various U.S. agencies about transparency of the, whether our NIH was involved in granting, funding the Wuhan Institute of Virology. All right, so she and her two other Congress people has been sending the NIH 29 questions, requesting information and related document about how COVID-19 started, and whether U.S. taxpayer fund supported research at the WIV, right, Wuhan Institute of Virology. She waited for 2 months, no answer until 2 months later. All right, and I finally responded, and with a 2-page letter. And in this letter, the NIH defended its grant process, saying that we got this process and it's very good, and then briefly describing the nature of its 2014 grant. This is about 7 years ago to the Wuhan lab. All right. The letter went on to express support for the continuing investigation into the COVID-19 origin and offered to discuss the grant further in person. It looks like, very friendly and very, collaborative. However, it does not provide any of the document that Congresswoman Roger requested. So after 2 months, he just got a statement type of letter, which gave her nothing. She was very, very frustrated, but she couldn't do anything, because without the joining hand of the Democratic majority, her committee cannot issue subpoena and force to obtain those documents.
Wow.
So this is one of the situations that is happening in our Congress, all right? So I think, truly, guys, we all think that our Congress should join hands, just like a 9/11 attack, right? To just demand for the accountability, and we should call our Congress people, ask them that you should support that. We should make this a bipartisan thing, just like the previous technology competition. But this is not happening, and that's very unfortunate.
Yeah,
Oh.
and I saw Louis was saying, but first we need to purge the CCP infiltrators and the collaborators in all of our American companies. That's a very good point. Actually, a little bit later, we're gonna share with you another kind of infiltrators. So stay with us. And truly, like Judy was asking, how can we realistically hold CCP accountable? We can sue them, but they never pay. How do you get money from countries who don't play by the rules?
Good question.
Yeah.
Good question. Let me share with you my observation. What will happen? So, what can American do? What can American people do if the Congress would pass that bill and allow the victims to sue CCP in the U.S. court? Will that work? Yes, actually, it will work. It will work. So what would happen is this? Okay, the law is passed, laying the ground for the winning such cases, and then people go there, class lawsuit or individual lawsuit, whatever it is. Chances are the judge will rule against the CCP. CCP have enough investment in this country, okay, and then enough properties, assets, and so on and so forth, and then that the court could hold those property, liable. To say the least, they bought so much bond. So much bond of the U.S. Treasury bond, right? So those are literally, we can just say, okay, let's just stop those. We don't pay those bond. We invalidate those bond. We pay the money to this to the plaintiffs. That's one way. That's one simple way. There's many other ways, because the two countries has been interwoven so much, right? And a lot of like a CCP, they send their kids, the government officials. The Princetons send their kids into the top university, and their visas can be revoked. Just think about that simple action. It's very, very powerful, believe it or not. You could ask us, what's the big deal? Certain person's kids cannot go to Harvard. To them, it's a big deal because it's personal. Okay, it's very, very intimidating to them, because CCP people, they're very, very selfish people. They take care of themselves more than they take care of the nation and the people. So by doing that, there's a lot of ways that U.S. can take to hold them accountable. But to say the least, the bond, it's probably, I think, $3 trillion U.S. bond that is essentially in the hand of the U.S. government. So that's at least something I can say. But if you do that, right? They're going to retaliate, right? They're going to confiscate it, like Tesla in Shanghai and so on and so forth. There will be a bigger war going on there.
Yeah, like Senator Tom Cotton said that he suggests that the United States should start punishing the Chinese government for the pandemic, and he suggests to revoke China's permanent most favored nation status, and also just revoke visa from CCP members and their children, so that they cannot get educated in the West. So actually, we shared with you the viewpoints from the the tank man, right, Mr. Fang, he suggestion is just to truly just to basically decouple with the CCP. And I saw, a question saying, so the Chinese, why the Chinese Communist government is stealing the technology from the U.S., right? So if we truly decouple from them, who's gonna get panic is the CCP, because they would have nothing to steal from. But I think the complicated thing is because our economy is so intertwined with the China right now. It's for a lot of companies, people in the business, how can they realize that, and in some way, how to make them realize that they actually China need the U.S. more rather than the other way around.
Exactly. Bear that in mind. If you take that in, I think you are smarter than most of our politicians in Washington, D.C. Okay. Among the, for the conflict that exists between these two nations, CCP cannot afford it. They just cannot afford it. That's why the tariff by President Trump was so scary to them. It's just really a heavy blow on them. They don't show it, right? They don't show it. They don't admit it, but they were significantly weakened by that. So actually, U.S. has a lot of very, very big leverage over there. As I told you before in my previous show, I truly believe so, based upon my knowledge and experience. And CCP is essentially a paper tiger. It's a paper tiger, and the U.S. is a real tiger. But when they sit on both sides of a negotiation table, U.S. is a gentleman, the other side is a rascal. Okay, that's pretty much that's on the surface. In the back, you got a real tiger here, and you got a paper tiger over there.
Yeah, when you're facing this type of government, they don't play by the rule. Not saying that we have to be mean, but you really have to be strong, actually.
Yeah. Hold your principle and don't yield. And the CCP will yield. That's for sure. Okay, let's move on to the third topic, which is rather interesting. This is also the theme of today's show, right? Talk about the media for sale. What is happening?
Right. So actually, a Chinese news agency controlled by the Chinese Communist government has been paying American media for millions of dollars over the past year. And even during the pandemic, actually, they even doubled its investment. So that CCP media is called the China Daily. It's an English version newspaper. And so actually it's according to the DOJ's file. So it's very interesting that actually recently, we were talking about how the administration and the media, the corporate media, just suddenly made this turn on the lab leak theory, right? So people just feel we have been discussing that. So whether no matter what's the reason behind, we will have to see if there's more reasons. But actually, the CCP government is now panic. Okay, so the Xinhua news agency, it's a mouthpiece, just recently, openly named several U.S. media and they're saying that's those are the unscrupulous media. Okay, that includes like the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and the Washington Post. And why is that, right? So according to the financial disclosure by the China Daily filed with the DOJ, because they are designated as a foreign agent. So in this, in the whole year, okay, so it disclosed that how much money they have been paying some of our corporate media, including Los Angeles Times, Financial Times, Foreign Policy Magazine, and so on and so forth. And they also, that's for the advertisement, okay? And they also paying like another $1 million for the printing cost to print the China Daily. And over 80% of the printing cost were paid to also these American newspapers like Los Angeles Times and Chicago Tribune, Houston Chronicle, Boston Globe, and Seattle Times. So if we backtrack a little bit, last year in February, China Daily, along with other three Chinese Communist government-controlled media, were required to register as a foreign agent by the Trump administration. And so they have to disclose their relationships in the U.S. and the activities as a foreign agent, as well as the financial information. So let's just take a look. All right. So the first half a year, last year, this like May of last year to October, take a look. Their total income. Total income is about 4.54 million, but the vast majority of it, over 97%, actually it was subsidized from its headquarters, which actually means it's from the Chinese government. Only less than 3% is from its operation here, from the advertisement and the subscription. And let's take a look at the second half year, November 2020 to this April. It got a little bit more money, actually, 5.6 million, and again, over 95% are from Beijing headquarters, less than 5% from the advertisement and the subscription from here.
Is it China Daily?
China Daily.
Okay.
Okay, so that's according to it's a FARA filing with the DOJ.
Yeah. May I go sideways to share with our audience about some insight? Okay. So Sound of Hope is a Chinese American public radio when we started about 18 years ago, right? So we were competing with this CCP sponsored Chinese language radio in the Silicon Valley. All right. So what do we do? Okay, we have to survive. We have to earn every penny to pay for the airtime fee and then pay our staff and pay whatever equipment, right? So, and we are basically an essential group of founders who were Silicon Valley high-tech engineers. You cannot do your engineer and do your media at the same time. So at a certain point, you quit your job and you just become a full-time media person. You knock on the door, including Kathy, and and the way did a little bit. Knock on the door, cold visit, cold call, and try to earn the ad. In the meantime, you got this another Chinese radio, who reportedly subsidized by the CCP, just like what you just saw, China Daily. Mm-hmm. They don't need to earn enough money. Okay, the money is not a big deal. Okay, so they could just live on subsidy from the CCP, from the foreign nation, and compete with us. So they lower the price significantly and make the competition very, very difficult for us. Furthermore, on top of that, when we earn a certain ad, a phone call from the consulate could threaten a Chinese American business owner to take yank his ad of our radio, create a further difficulty. So this is the path we've been coming through, the true Chinese independent media. So we've been, fighting this kind of a subsidized. The subsidy from the CCP is essentially is fatal to the local Chinese American media.
Yeah, and China Daily actually is trying to influence the general American population. Okay, so let's go on to take a look at its expense. All right, so from May last year to October, it spent total $1.2 million on printing. And they, mostly it's from the print, paid to the printing shop in different metropolitan cities. But at least 1/3 of them they paid to those corporate media. Okay, 383,000 paid to Los Angeles Times, Seattle Times, Chicago Tribune, Houston Chronicle, and Boston Globe. And take a note, actually in Bay Area, they had the largest spend, but it's to a printing company. All right, so go to their total operating expense. Here is where they spend their ad time. Okay, so total expense is 3.3 million. 27% are paid to the corporate media for advertisement. So that's amount to over 880,000. to Wall Street Journal, Los Angeles Times again, Foreign Policy, Financial Times, The Globe, and the Mail, that's in Canada. All right. So in the second half of year, November last year to this April, again, they total spent about $1 million in printing. No surprise. And its operation expense increased to $4.5 million. Okay. And they increased their ads on the corporate media to 43% of the total expense. So total amount is close to $2 million. And take a note, they added a new client, which is a Times magazine. Paid to Times magazine $700,000. So if we compare these two parts, the first half year, second half year, the later half of year, they actually spent the increase, the advertisement spend increased by like 125% from 880K to 2 million, more than double. And we know, what's happening. They try to influence the media in United States with their rhetoric, and mostly in pandemic, right? About the pandemic. So exactly what kind of content this CCP agent is trying to push into the U.S. media. All right. So they named this as partnership. And China Daily produced a section called the China Watch, and the insert into this newspaper. Some are in print, some are online. So this China Watch, its design just looks like just normal newspaper stories. But actually it includes articles really portray the Chinese Communist government and life in China in a very positive light. For example, the Los Angeles Times ran an 8-page editorial, China Watch, in June last year. And painted a rosy picture of the Chinese economy and its business. The editorial included stories pushing the United States and China to keep a good relationship, even after it's reported that the communist government withheld the information from the WHO about the pandemic. And another example is we saw that Times magazine, right, became a client of China Daily, took $700,000 to run its ads. So they total published 75 online articles on Times website and features. You can see that they would, in a very fine print, it says paid partner content, but it didn't mention China Daily's affiliation with the Chinese government. So that's first thing. And it posted content promoting Chinese, like the drone maker that provide products to civil Uyghurs being held in captive, and also posted an article promote China's 5-year plan and several other pro-CCP pieces. As you can see, the 5-year plan, right? And in its Times March 30th last year's issue, it published a special 6 covers focusing on the pandemic, titled When the World Stops. The editor-chief and the CEO of Times, Edward Felsenthal, wrote to the readers that by showing those images together, and they are trying to show that, see, we are all how truly banded together. We are all in this fight, and including one, the yellow, the man in the yellow. That's a person on the street of Beijing who is doing the restaurant delivery. And the CEO and the editor-in-chief of magazine, he especially mentioned on Times China's correspondence. It's China's correspondent Charlie Campbell. He went to Wuhan, the epicenter of the virus on January 21st last year, and had a special report. But if you look into Campbell's report, it praised the Chinese authorities have clearly learned a lesson. Okay, that's a quote from the 2002 SARS outbreak. And it says, by quickly and freely shared the 2019 coronavirus genome sequence have allowed the international community to develop rapid diagnostic tests to identify cases, which is totally opposite to the truth. And it used a very, professional way. Such words actually came out from an Australian professor's mouth through the interview. So this CEO just touting that they are trying to show their historical mission of telling the truth to the readers. So we can see how this goes. So experts at the Hudson Institute, which tracks CCP's foreign influence activities, said that the communist regime uses the inserts to push subtle messages to unaware American audience. And it published a report in 2018 and said that if a reader is trained, they would notice those warning label about a paid advertisement. But probably most of people might not notice that the inserts are pure Communist Party's propaganda. And it says the ads brings in substantial revenues to those corporate media, but it may make it difficult for them, which are already cash-strapped companies, to wean themselves off this parasitic relationship.
Yeah, so in the Chinese Communist Party's languages, this is called borrow a ship to sail to the sea, all right? Because your ship is not working, borrow other people's ship and it's to sail on the sea. So, and the consequence of this is there's many facets of this. I just want to share with you some some unofficial the facts, okay, which is not reported. So actually, they allocated $10 billion US to spend each year. Because it's from the Politburo. It's a mandate, spend those money and change the image of the China. And then those running people, or those running hands, they pretty much got this obligation or pressure to spend. So they spend like crazy. They buy things at the Times Square, literally for nothing, for no effect. So I personally know that there's a guy in Southern California. His name is Mr. Su. He bought nearly 30 radio stations in this country, okay, all with the CCP's money. And then, to no avail, just no result. He produced a program which is also online. As I was doing the investigative reporting, the streaming on the web have how many listeners, viewers? 0. Nobody was watching that, but he got a lot of money. And also how the money coming in. Okay, his staff said a thick envelope was mailed in from Hong Kong into his office. You open the envelope, it's full of dollar bills. That's how he obtained the money. Mm-hmm. So through all kinds of ways, they just shuttle money into this country and then spend them on media, buying radio stations, TV stations, buy the insert like what Kathy just reported.
Yeah, and they are very sneaky as well. Actually, the China Daily has been doing that for over a decade. But prior to 2016, they are not really revealing, reporting to the U.S. government. Mm-hmm. So actually, 35 Republican congressmen actually just found out, and they demanded the DOJ to probe them. Mm-hmm. So eventually, China Daily submitted a revised report for 2016 to 2000, 4 years. Yeah. And then it reveals that in these 4 years, they spent nearly $20 million for advertising on the corporate media in the U.S. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And, it's New York Times last year, they just quietly deleted hundreds of those such editorial from its website due to some pressure. Yeah. Yeah. But we don't know if they just permanently just to cut off the tie, or what happened?
Yeah. And this the radio, the Mr. Su in Southern California, he built this. It's called China's covert global radio network, including 30 stations in this country, and then it was it was reported, investigated, and exposed by Reuters. Okay, what happened after that? That this is 2015. So when a reporter called the Justice Department and called the FCC, what's their response? They said, if there's nobody complaining, we won't investigate it. If nobody complain, we do not investigate it. So they just that's how their attitude, they have back then, 2015. All right. So nowadays in my community in the Southern California, that's another incident. They bought a mega station, FM 690, AM 690, from the Mexico-U.S. border. So the local community people, after learning about that, they complained to the FCC. Final result, FCC just refused to issue the license to that CCP station. It's called Phoenix Station. It's essentially a CCP station. So this is how passive our government is, folks. How passive. Nobody complain, we won't do anything. And so they do not go out proactively, go out and chase after them. And then they really, they're just growing this national security threat on our soil, on our ground. So I think we should all write to our congresspeople, congressmen, congresswomen, and writing to them, ask them to really, we need to chase them out. Because what in Chinese language is called a silver bullet, a bullet made of silver. It's very valuable. It's a dollar bullet. It's got a dollar bullet or silver bullet. They hit on those people who need money to operate. It's oftentimes it's very effective, unless the people they try to buy have high moral ground, and then they will say no. Not everybody can do that, but to protect our nation, the United States of America, we shall chase CCP's force out of this country, and this is the time. And okay, so that will be it. And by the way, and so basically, let me summarize. They wasted tons of monies, and then they also steal in it. A lot of people got rich. CCP officials, they're the spies. They got rich because they got the money. It's for free. There's no condition. They just wrap it up, deposit in their bank. So a lot of deception happened, and the U.S. turning a blind eye to it. And finally, it's a good news. Okay, finally, that this $10 billion spending is largely ineffective.
Yeah, and remember, they tried to change their strategy from wolf warrior to play lovely, right?
Play lovely.
So it means that they realized it's not working. Okay, no matter how much money they put in, it's not working. So that's a good news. And I think as more people, more of our fellow Americans realizes that, the less effect they would have. And we also should ask our elected officials to hold them accountable. To voice out against the CCP's infiltration and bribes and everything.
Okay, so I'm sorry, got this little sore here with my throat, but that'll be all for today. So basically,
I just saw James from Los Angeles win Kathy for president and vice president.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
We need to figure out a way to change the constitution so that we got we got a chance for that. But thank you for your nice word. And
and Twinkly said, I bet Kathy would visit the border. I would love to do that. Actually, I did visit the border a few years ago at the California and the Mexican border. I really would love to do that. I also wanted to, I'm this type of journalist who really want to be on the front line. I would love to go to like Arizona, Maricopa County to witness their the audit and go to the border to Texas, to California, Southern California. Really love to do that, but have to figure out a way.
Okay, Chuck, you wrote that you two are so wonderful. Thank you for working to keep the truth coming forth. May Almighty God bless all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck.
Yeah, may Almighty God bless all of us.
Yes.
And He will. And okay, great to have you with us. And we see, all the more than 100% the likes. Thank you very much. And we'll be here for long. And I think all the work, all the truth-telling work will pay off. People will learn enough, and finally they will take things into their own hands when the time comes.
Yeah,
and,
this is the
yeah.
most beautiful country, the country with freedom and liberty. Remember that?
And with your folks, their $10 billion spending is largely ineffective. That's their conclusion because of people like you. You know how to discern things. You know how to tell. You know what's right, what's wrong, and they cannot fool Americans. And so let's just how to say, stay strong and stay upright and stay diligent.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Wei.
I'm Kathy. Take care.
Take care until Friday.
All right. Bye-bye.
Good night.